think about what happens to the human body the very second a person decides they are going to do something really dangerous.
Right. It's an immediate, massive physical shift.
Yeah, I mean, long before they actually throw a punch or, pull a weapon or even just sprint through a security checkpoint, their physiology goes into absolute overdrive.
Totally. The brain just dumps this massive dose of adrenaline right into their bloodstream.
Exactly, and their pupils dilate so they can take in more light, right? Their digestive system just instantly shuts down.
Which is why their mouth goes completely dry.
Yeah, and at the same time, their heart rate spikes, basically to pump blood directly into their major muscle groups. So, they might think they're playing it cool.
Well, they definitely think they're blending into the crowd.
Right, like they're completely undetectable. But their own biology is, well, it's aggressively betraying their intentions.
Which is such a crazy concept when you really think about it.
It really is. So today on the Deep Dive, we are exploring a framework that teaches you exactly how to read those involuntary physical betrayals. Our mission today is to, well, shift your entire mindset.
A very necessary shift, I'd say.
Yeah, we want to move you out of a world where you just react to danger when it's already happening and into a world where you can objectively predict and prevent it.
Which is a really profound shift in how we navigate our daily lives. I mean, we are heavily conditioned as a society to just focus on crisis management,
Right, like how we respond when things inevitably go wrong.
Exactly. But the material we're diving into today asks us to completely reevaluate that timeline. We're pulling from a fascinating 3-page summary of a book called Left of Bang.
Such a great title.
It is. And it's a framework originally developed by former Marines who were involved in the USMC's Combat Under program. It's all about training your perception to see the invisible precursors to a crisis.
Okay, let's unpack this. Specifically, the title itself, Left of Bang. What exactly does that phrase represent when we're, talking about the timeline of an event?
So if you imagine a timeline drawn horizontally across a piece of paper, and right in the center, you draw an explosion.
Okay, got it.
That explosion represents bang. Bang is the exact moment an attack occurs, or, a violent act takes place, or a crisis just hits its absolute peak.
The inciting incident, basically.
Right. And everything that happens after that moment, the emergency response, the panic, the police investigation, that is all considered right of bang.
So it's already too late, essentially.
Exactly. But everything that happens before that exact moment is left of bang. The buildup, the preparation, the surveillance, and, most importantly, the subtle behavioral cues.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, the entire methodology here is designed to keep you operating and making decisions entirely left of bang, with the ultimate goal being that the bang never actually happens.
Which introduces the core premise of these former Marines. And it fundamentally challenges basically how we talk about violence in our culture.
What's fascinating here is the central thesis. Violence is almost never spontaneous.
Wait, really? Because you always hear the opposite.
I know. If you turn on the evening news after an incident, you will inevitably hear some witness say, it just came out of nowhere. 1 minute we were standing there and the next minute, total chaos.
Right. You hear that exact quote all the time.
You do. But the authors of this framework argue that, from a behavioral standpoint, that is completely false. People who intend to commit harmful acts almost always display observable, involuntary behavioral indicators before they take action.
Because their bodies are reacting to the sheer stress of what they're about to execute.
Exactly.
So the goal of this deep dive is to equip you with the specific tools to spot those exact cues, which will allow you to make much better decisions under uncertainty. But before we get into the mechanics of how to do that, we have to start by aggressively unlearning a very common, very dangerous habit.
Oh, this is a big one.
Yeah. To stay left of bang, you cannot just walk through the world looking for people who look, scary.
Right. Relying on a person's appearance is a completely flawed strategy for predicting danger. The text emphasizes this heavily, like demographics and stereotypes are completely useless here.
Useless?
Completely. Age, race, gender, the type of clothing someone happens to be wearing, their perceived socioeconomic status, none of these things actually predict violent intent.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, if you are filtering a crowd looking for a specific type of person based on a preconceived bias, you are practically guaranteeing that you'll miss the actual threat. The focus has to be entirely 100% on behavior.
Wait, I have to push back on this a little bit because isn't it hardwired into human nature to judge a book by its cover? I mean, our brains are constantly looking for cognitive shortcuts to save energy, right?
Sure they are.
And visual stereotypes are just the easiest shortcuts available. So how do we actually train ourselves to ignore appearance and focus purely on behavior?
You're right that the brain wants that shortcut, which is exactly why the Combat Hunter program doesn't just tell you to, observe better. It provides a structural foundation called context.
Context.
And context begins by establishing a baseline. You simply cannot identify abnormal behavior until you have clearly defined what normal behavior looks like for that specific environment.
Ah, at that specific time of day even.
Exactly.
It's like a heart monitor in a hospital.
Yeah.
You have to establish the patient's resting heart rate, their baseline, before the machine has any context to alert you to an alarming spike.
That's a perfect analogy.
Because if the machine doesn't know what normal is, it literally doesn't know what a crisis is.
That is the exact mechanism at play. And every single physical environment has its own unique, predictable resting heart rate.
Oh.
Think about the baseline of, say, a busy suburban shopping mall on a Saturday afternoon.
Oh, chaos.
Right, compared to the baseline of a quiet county courthouse.
Yeah, they are completely different ecosystems. I mean, in a mall, the baseline behavior is highly erratic. It's disorganized. People are suddenly stopping in the middle of walkways to look at window displays.
Kids are running in circles.
Right. Teenagers are speaking really loudly. People are carrying multiple cumbersome bags. They're, staring down at their phones while walking.
Just all over the place.
But if you take that exact baseline behavior and drop it into a courthouse, it immediately becomes a massive anomaly. I mean, in a courthouse, the baseline is hushed voices, deliberate movement, rigid posture.
Yeah, a very high awareness of authority.
Right, you don't just wander around looking at your phone in a courtroom.
Exactly. The environment completely dictates the behavioral norm. The text uses the contrast of a chaotic college football game versus a solemn church service.
Total opposites.
Or, let's take a major airport. If you're sitting near departure gate and you see someone sprinting full speed down the concourse, your brain might initially flag that sudden aggressive movement.
Sure, running inside usually means something is wrong.
Right, but when you apply the baseline context of an airport terminal, they're sweating, they're dragging a roller bag, desperately checking the departure screen, and running toward a gate.
Oh, yeah, that behavior is perfectly normal there. They're just a stressed traveler who's late for a flight.
Exactly. But if you see someone sprinting full speed away from a security checkpoint or, sprinting directly toward a restricted employee-only door.
Okay, yeah, now you have a severe anomaly.
Right. The action is exactly the same, but the context transforms it from normal to highly alarming.
So once we have successfully established the baseline for wherever we happen to be, how do we systematically spot those anomalies? Because the authors break this down by analyzing human behavior through a specific lens, right?
Yeah.
Rather than just guessing.
They do, and they break it down into 6 specific domains, and it really starts from the inside out. The first domain we look at is kinesics, which is essentially body language.
Right, how movement and posture reflect heightened emotion. So you're looking for things like unnatural stiffness, maybe clenched fists, or grooming gestures like wiping their face constantly.
Or even freezing in place.
Yeah, just stopping dead when everyone else is moving.
Exactly. Kinesics is huge because they are trying to suppress that massive internal physiological spike we talked about earlier. So their body movements become profoundly unnatural.
They're trying so hard to look normal that they look completely bizarre.
Right. And beyond the general stiffness, you want to look for specific subconscious tactical movements. A key indicator the authors mention is blading the body.
Blading, what does that look like?
It's a subconscious survival mechanism where a person turns their torso slightly sideways relative to a target.
Oh, like a boxer stance?
Exactly like that. They do this to protect their vital organs or to hide the side of their body that might be concealing a weapon.
Wow. Okay, what else in kinesics?
You also look for excessive, rigid scanning of the environment, deliberately keeping their hands hidden in pockets or behind objects, and what the authors call target glances.
Which is when their eyes repeatedly flicker back and forth to a specific person or like a security camera or an exit door, right?
Yes. Their brains simply can't help but visually fixate on their objective.
That makes total sense. And this ties perfectly into the second domain, which is biometrics. Here's where it gets really interesting, because you absolutely cannot fake this internal reaction.
No, you can't. It's driven entirely by the sympathetic nervous system.
Right. You can't just politely ask your nervous system to stand down. You can literally see this happening in real time. The text points to heavy, rapid breathing as the body suddenly demands more oxygen.
You'll also see excessive sweating, even if they're in a heavily air-conditioned room.
Or a visible pulse pounding in their neck, Trembling hands.
And they touched on this earlier, but you'll see their skin color change.
Hmm.
The body is literally prioritizing survival, pulling blood away from the superficial capillaries in the skin and pumping it deep into the major muscle groups.
To prepare for physical combat.
Exactly. That's why a person about to act violently might suddenly appear ghostly pale. Or alternatively, the blood pressure spike might result in a heavily flushed red face.
Got a totally dry mouth.
Yes, you'll see them repeatedly licking their lips or swallowing hard because non-essential functions like the salivary glands just shut down under extreme stress.
Wow. Okay, so if a person is exhibiting those biometrics, they're pale, sweating, breathing heavy, and their kinesics are off, they're rigid, bladed, hiding their hands, that is going to fundamentally change how they navigate physical space.
Absolutely. They aren't going to just casually stroll through a crowd. Which
Yeah.
brings us to the third domain, proxemics.
Proxemics, so how people navigate space.
Right. Normal pedestrians move fluidly, almost like water flowing around rocks in a stream. They unconsciously maintain polite social distances, they smoothly yield the right of way, and they generally just go with the flow of foot traffic.
But someone harboring violent intent navigates space with a distinctly different geometry.
Exactly.
I always think of this like watching a shark navigate a school of fish. It's not just that the shark is in the school of fish, rather than just watching another fish swim with the current. It's that the shark completely ignores the current and moves with a deliberate predatory purpose.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. In terms of proxemics, you will see a person deliberately closing the distance on someone in a way that violates the baseline of personal space for that specific environment.
Or the opposite, right? Like maintaining highly unusual rigid spacing.
Yes, like hanging back exactly 30 feet behind a patrol pattern, for example.
Distracting them.
Right. You will see them circling targets or purposefully plotting out escape routes rather than just moving from point A to point B.
What about if they bump into someone?
That's a great tell. If a normal person bumps into someone in a crowded hallway, they naturally apologize, shift their weight, and move on. A person hyper-focused on an objective will often violently avoid the obstacle or just push straight through it.
Keeping their momentum locked on their target.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's how they move through space. But their relationship to the physical terrain itself changes too, which the framework calls geographics, the fourth domain.
Geographics is all about the individual's relationship to their surroundings. Basically, are they using the environment the way it was designed to be used?
Right. And the text provides a series of really specific questions to ask yourself when observing a space. Like, are they loitering in a transitional area where people normally just pass through?
Good one. Are they repeatedly appearing in the exact same location over a span of time?
Are they overtly studying the security measures, like tracking the patrol path of a guard or checking the hinges on a restricted door?
Or meticulously positioning themselves in the blind spots of surveillance cameras?
Yes. There is a quote from the text that just perfectly summarizes this. It says, "You are looking for someone who is out of place behaviorally rather than socially."
I love that quote.
It brings us right back to ditching the stereotypes. It doesn't matter if they're wearing a very expensive, tailored business suit. If that person in the suit is standing behind a concrete pillar in a subterranean parking garage for 20 minutes without moving toward a car.
Their behavior is a severe mismatch with the geography.
Exactly, which actually transitions us perfectly into the fifth domain, iconography, visible symbols.
Yes, iconography. This encompasses the visual markers people wear to communicate identity, affiliation, or belief. We're talking about uniforms, specific gang identifiers, tattoos.
Religious garments, political clothing, that sort of thing.
Right. But the authors are incredibly strict about how we interpret this domain. You cannot let your personal biases hijack your observation here.
We have to be completely impartial.
100% impartial. The authors explicitly caution against making assumptions based solely on symbols. Iconography provides context, but it does not dictate intent.
Got it.
So, whether someone is wearing a highly charged political shirt or prominently displaying a religious symbol or has visible tattoos affiliated with a specific group, that iconography alone does not make them a behavioral threat.
You must never make a threat judgment based on what someone is wearing.
Never. It absolutely must be combined with the behavioral cues we've been discussing, the physiological stress, the unnatural body language, the predatory movement. Iconography is merely one piece of background context.
It's a lens to view the behavior through, not the behavior itself.
Perfectly said.
Which lands us to the sixth and final, and honestly my favorite, way to observe an environment, atmospherics.
This one is fascinating.
It really is, because this isn't about watching one specific person. This is about watching what happens when the environment itself notices the danger before your conscious brain does.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, atmospherics proves that crowds often operate like a highly sensitive single organism.
Right. Like, human beings are incredibly adept at subconsciously picking up on micro expressions of tension or fear, even if they don't realize they're doing it.
Exactly. We are wired to sense predators.
Think about the concept of surface tension on a quiet pond. If you drop a pebble in, you might not actually see the pebble hit the bottom, but you absolutely see the ripples moving outward and disturbing the water.
The indicators for atmospherics are those exact ripples.
Yes. The text describes things like a crowded, noisy room suddenly dropping into total silence. Everyone instinctively turning to look in one single direction at the same time.
Or people unconsciously shifting their weight, or physically moving away from a specific spot.
Leaving this bizarre, empty bubble of space around an individual.
Right, because our subconscious processing speed is vastly superior to our conscious analytical thought. Atmospherics is essentially learning to read the collective subconscious of the room.
Wow.
If you walk into a subway terminal and 100 people have suddenly stopped talking and shifted their posture away from a specific platform, you don't need to visually identify the threat yet to know that the baseline has been severely disrupted.
The atmosphere is just screaming that something is wrong.
Exactly.
But, this brings up a massive operational hurdle for me. If I'm sitting in that subway terminal or waiting at baggage claim in the airport, and I spot someone exhibiting just one of these behaviors.
Okay, let's play this out.
Say a guy is sweating profusely and pacing back and forth near the exit. Does my brain immediately ring the alarm bell? Like, do I treat him as an active threat? Because, couldn't he just be a deeply anxious flyer? Or maybe he's incredibly stressed about a make-or-break job interview he just flew in for.
That is such a crucial question, and you've hit on the most critical safeguard in the entire methodology. The authors are definitive on this point. An anomaly is not automatically a threat.
Okay, so what is it?
An anomaly simply demands further observation. The greatest danger in this framework is reacting prematurely to a single cue. Someone who is heavily sweating might just be fighting off a fever, like you said.
Or someone intensely scanning a room might just be desperately looking for a lost child.
Precisely. So, to answer your question, how do we cross the threshold from an innocent anomaly to a genuine predictor of violence?
Yeah, how do we do that?
By looking for clusters. You never, ever make a decision based on an individual indicator. You analyze the baseline to see if there are clusters of indicators compounding on top of one another.
Ah, clusters. Okay, so one person pacing and sweating is just a stressed traveler.
Right.
But if we stack the evidence from the text, say that person is sweating profusely, plus their body is unnaturally rigid, plus they're repeatedly throwing target glances at a security checkpoint.
Keep going.
Plus their hands are concealed tightly in their jacket pockets. Plus they're deliberately violating the personal space of the people ahead of them in line. That is a cluster.
That is a massive cluster. Taken together, that cluster of physiological, kinetic, and spatial behavior provides overwhelming evidence of a specific heightened intent.
It paints a full picture that a single indicator never could.
Exactly. And training your brain to look for clusters creates a profound psychological shift. Instead of scanning a crowd and asking the inherently biased, unhelpful question of who looks dangerous, your internal dialogue transitions to an objective scientific question.
Which is, why is this behavior different?
Yes, why is this behavior different?
And that objectivity completely removes panic from the equation, which actually ties directly into a legendary decision-making model the authors rely on, known as the ODA loop.
Yes, John Boyd's ODA loop.
Right. ODA. It was created by military strategist John Boyd, and it stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, Act.
The ODA loop is basically the engine of human reaction. Every single time we face a stimulus, we have to cycle through those 4 steps.
Observe, Orient, Decide, Act.
First, we observe the data. Then, we orient ourselves to what that data means based on our context. Then we decide on a course of action, and finally, we act. And the rule is, in a crisis, whoever cycles through their ODA loop fastest wins.
Wow. And if you don't understand baselines and behavioral cues, you get completely stuck in the orient phase, don't you?
You absolutely do. You see the guy sweating and acting weird, but your brain just freezes. You're wondering, am I just being paranoid? Am I overreacting? Is he just late for a flight?
You waste precious seconds trying to orient yourself to reality.
Exactly. But if you have mastered the skill of observing baseline anomalies and identifying clusters using the 6 domains, you don't get stuck. Your observation is rooted in objective behavioral science.
Because you immediately recognize the cluster.
Right, which allows you to orient instantly. That speed allows you to decide and act with immense confidence, completely outpacing the decision cycle of a person intending to do harm. You're acting left of bang while they're still preparing for it.
So, what does this all mean for you as you go about your week? The text makes it clear that while these concepts were forged in the high-stakes environments of military combat and law enforcement, used for patrol operations, traffic stops, large-scale event security, this framework is deeply, deeply applicable to your everyday life.
It truly is. Whether you're walking alone to your car in a dark parking garage, or attending a packed outdoor concert, or just navigating your daily commute on public transit, this methodology offers a massive psychological upgrade.
Because it replaces the exhausting burden of generalized fear and visual profiling with the empowering tool of disciplined, objective observation.
Exactly.
Let's quickly distill the key takeaways from all this left-of-bang material. First, violence is rarely spontaneous. It is consistently preceded by involuntary, observable cues.
Second, context matters more than isolated actions. You must establish the baseline of an environment before you can ever hope to spot an anomaly.
Third, never jump to conclusions based on a single cue. Always demand a cluster of behaviors before deciding someone is a threat.
And finally, recognizing these cues early equals prevention. It is entirely about training your eyes to see the critical details that everyone else is overlooking.
Before we sign off, I know you had one final thought to share.
Yeah, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, one that builds on these physical principles, but stretches into a different realm entirely. We've spent this whole deep dive talking about physical environments, airports, courthouses, parking garages.
Right.
But consider your digital life for a moment.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Every email inbox, every corporate network, every social media platform has its own distinct baseline of normal activity.
That's very true.
So if you were to apply the philosophy of left of bang to the digital world, looking for behavioral anomalies in how an email is structured, or spotting digital kinesics in the strange timing of a login request.
Or sensing online atmospherics when network traffic suddenly shifts.
Exactly. Could you train yourself to spot a sophisticated cyber threat or a financial scam long before the digital bang ever actually happens?
That is a fascinating frontier. Yeah. Because the baseline exists everywhere, in the physical world and the digital one. You just have to know how to measure it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope you walk out your front door looking at the world with a bit more clarity. Stay curious, keep your eyes open, and remember, the goal isn't to figure out how to catch the falling glass. The goal is to see the wobble long before it ever falls.